Why does it seem like no one wants to talk about dreams anymore? Is it the post-9/11 worries, the post-recession blues, or the posts on social media by anyone with an opinion that have made the world so cynical these days? Are they obsolete, out of style? Are they uncool? Do you still have dreams? For many North Americans, a dream is nothing but an old-fashioned idea replaced by the harsh reality of a modern world. Longer work hours, higher debt, fewer raises, horrible bosses, less family time. Who's got time for dreams when everyone's just trying to get by? We're here to officially announce that WFG is bringing dreams back. And we're not doing it for just the ultra-wealthy like others are. We're doing it for everyone. Every age, every background, every gender, every experience level. Whoever you are, we're here to help you. And help starts with a financial education. When people know how money really works, they can reduce debt and enjoy the confidence that comes from knowing their families are protected financially. They can discover the excitement that comes from a solid strategy to save for the future and the hope that one day they might become financially independent. But we don't stop there. We open the door to anyone to become a business owner and be part of our mission to help others. We don't want anyone to shrink the size of their dreams to fit the size of their opportunity. That's why there's no limit to how many people can reach our top promotion levels. And that's why we don't put any limits on how much you can earn with us. Success is not reserved for a few. It's offered to anyone willing to learn, work hard, and grow. We believe anyone with the right support can transition from where they are today as someone's employee to where they could be tomorrow as an entrepreneur who owns their future. If you don't build your dream, someone will hire you to help build theirs. When you know how to protect your family financially, when you take control of your money, when you're enabled to succeed, an amazing thing happens. Dreams are all you want to talk about. If you still have dreams, start here.
All right, we'll get going here. I'd like to start off by congratulating and thanking everybody for showing up here tonight on our virtual open house. We'd love to have you in at the office, but this is kind of the best we can do with everything that's going on right now. I'd like to start off. My name is Mitch Carr. I'm your MC, and I'll be closing off this evening here. And tonight is really just a little bit of a story about who we are as a company and really what it is that we're out there doing for Canadian families. But before we get our first speaker up, I'd like to start off by congratulating you guys for coming on this call here tonight. And the reason I say congratulations, do you realize that more times people spend more time planning a 1-week vacation than they actually do their entire financial lives? You know, if we're going to go plan a trip somewhere, we spend hours, if not days, on Expedia and Travelocity, look at all the different resorts, all the different options, and eventually after, you know, a week or two, we finally pick that spot. A week or so before going on our trip, we're already starting to pack our bags. We're thinking about all the different things we're going to do. And before we get on that trip that week beforehand, you know, we don't have to worry about work anymore, right? Because once we're gone, it's somebody else's problem after that. But, you know, when it comes to the next 10, 15, 20 years of somebody's life, most people are lucky to actually spend 10, 15 minutes to get an idea on where it is they want to go. So tonight, our job here is really share some information. I'm sure you'd agree with me, the more information you have, regardless of the topic, the better off you'll be as you walk out of here, right? So we're going to get our first speaker up, Mr. Vic Pipke. Vic is actually, we've known Vic here now for about 17 years. Vic's been a client of mine for that long. He comes from a policing background, so you'll really see, you know, some of that credibility come out. But what you'll see is because he's been a client for such a long time, you'll really see that passion come out on really what it is that we do for Canadian families. Now, he's been with us for a little over 3 years now. 6 months after him making the decision to come full-time with us and walk away from his policing career, he got his own agency. He's now just got things absolutely rocking and rolling here. So to share a little bit about really what it is that we do for Canadian families, we're going to bring up Vic Pipke. So Vic Pipke, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mitch. Checks in the mail. Yeah, like Mitch said, I've been a client here for a very long time. And so I really saw the value firsthand of what Royal Financial Group did for me and my family, and how really they were different when all my other friends and family were complaining about the industry and what they were experiencing. My experience was completely different. Like you said, I come from a policing background. I've just retired in September of 2019 from the Edmonton Police Service. I was there for 21 years. The last 12 years I spent in the tactical team, better known as the SWAT team. So I got to shoot big guns and blow stuff up. Really screams money and finance knowledge. But I was one of those crazy people. I really loved doing what I did, and I loved getting up every morning, going to work until I didn't. And unfortunately, a very severe injury occurred that almost took my life, and it prevented me from being able to serve at the level I wanted. Now I had to find something else that I was passionate about, something I could still serve people and make an impact in people's lives at a very high level that I wasn't able to do as a police officer anymore. And having been with Royal Financial Group as a client for so long, I decided to take a look at the industry, right? And what I realized very quickly was that I could impact people's lives in a more profound way than I ever did, I ever could, or ever would as a police officer. See, as a police officer, I help people at the darkest time of their life and saw a lot of things you probably most human beings shouldn't see. But when I got to come here, I got to help people prepare for the best times of their life. And it was just such a fulfilling and rewarding thing to be able to transition into. And I'll tell you a little bit about why it was so easy for me to transition into that. I'm going to share my screen now, so give me 1 second. Come on. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of who we are, what we do, and then Mitch is going to finish off with a little bit about our expansion campaign. And when I talk about who we are, I'm going to talk about Royal Financial Group, give you a little bit of history of our parent company, Aegon. And I want you to think to yourself while I'm talking about these things, are these credible companies? If you were going to refer somebody to a Royal Financial Group agent, would you be confident and put your reputation on the line that you're going to be referring them to a credible company? I'm going to also talk about strategies that we use that make us really different than the rest of the industry. And I want you to ask yourself, could these strategies, as radical as they might seem, be life-changing? Could they alter the course of a family's life, knowing the things that we teach them? And then lastly, as we're talking about things, there's going to be people that pop into your mind, think, you know what, so-and-so really needs to hear this, or so-and-so really needs to hear that. You know what, just keep those people's names in mind and make sure you can sit down and talk to them later, and maybe refer the person who invited you here tonight to that person, and we can help them out as well, right? So in the end, we are a referral-based company. So, we've been in Canada for about 20 years. And then as of the end of 2016, we became the largest independent broker-dealer in the entire country. And we don't do any advertising. So that was simply by going out and doing great things, educating and helping average families get to their goals and dreams that they want. And then just relying on that good work to result in referrals, okay? So I'm going to talk a little bit about Aegon for a few seconds. Now, Aegon's our parent company. Okay. Now, a lot of people have heard of Aegon. They're a Dutch company. They've been around longer than Canada's been a country. They've been around over 175 years. They're the 4th largest financial services company in the entire world. They're traded on every major stock market. Just to give you an idea of how big they are, they're about 10 times the size of a very small, little-known company called Coca-Cola. Right. So pretty big deal. About 30 years ago, they wanted to move into North America, and instead of starting a company from scratch, they decided to buy a company that they believed in. And at the time, the industry was really breaking down. Big companies were buying small companies, and those big companies were concentrating on high-value clients alone. Now, what that meant was there was a lot of Canadian families being left behind, right? Well, Royal Financial Group was the one coming in and using their mission statement, no family left behind, to fill that void and really give Canadians access to the knowledge and the access to products that the rich already had access to, and really changing people's lives in that way. So Aegon picked us up, and we flourished, like I said, to be the largest broker dealer in the country as of 2016, right? So kind of a big deal, and adds to our credibility to have such a large company. They're worth over $1 trillion. So it's nice to have that kind of backing. And we're kind of the crown jewel in their industry. They just love what we do for families. And so they do everything they can to help us out. Now, I said we don't do any advertising, but we do a lot of sponsorship in the world of sports, right? We're one of the main sponsors in the world of curling. We do sponsorship in the NHL. We even sponsor the Toronto Argonauts. Now, if you can see in the middle of the screen on the bottom, the Jennifer Jones team, we started sponsoring them in about 2012, I think it was. And that year they went to the Olympics and won the gold medal. About 3 years ago, we started sponsoring the Toronto Argonauts. The year we sponsored them, they went to the Grey Cup and won the championship. So a little bit of a trend here. I'm hoping that we're going to sponsor the Oilers one day and maybe we'll go to the playoffs, right? But really what it says to me is it talks about credibility. These people, their reputation is everything, and they're probably not willing to put our logo on their uniform if they're not confident we're going out and doing great things for families. We even have a lot of really big business people in the business world speak out on our behalf. We have Tony Robbins, who did an event just for Royal Financial Group agents. Ed Milet, who's the biggest social media influencer in the world. We've been written about in Forbes. The founder of Second Cup, Frank O'Day, is even a part of our executive council, right? So they really believe in what we do in the system. That helps us get into to help a lot more families than the traditional system. So just again, a little bit of a comment on our credibility. Now, what do? Well, we're a full service independent brokerage, okay? Well, full service is kind of important. Full service means we do just about everything that touches a person's financial life, right? I like to call us the Amazon of the financial world. We do put everything under one roof to make sure you don't have to travel all over the place to find all the products and services that you need. Now, sometimes in the traditional industry, you'll have a different person that takes care of different places or different parts of your financial world. You'll have someone that takes care of your mortgage, your insurance, your investments, your home and auto. And typically those people don't talk to each other. So sometimes you can pay twice for the same product and you really don't even know about it because it's hidden within the products that you're using. Now, by putting everything under one roof, we make sure everything works harmoniously. It's there when you need it and that you don't pay too much. Now, being independent is massively important. Independent means there are no World Financial Group products. I'll say it again. There are no World Financial Group products. That means we have no bias to any company on the face of the earth. Our only concern is doing what's best for the families that we serve. So we don't get paid more if we go to A, B, or C, right? Unlike the person that works for the blue company has to use blue products. The red company has to use red products. We can use anybody's products and services to find the best product that fits what is going to help get through the challenges that Canadian families are facing. Now on the screen there, you can see a whole bunch of different companies, right? Some pretty big names on there. There's RBC, one of the largest banks in North America. BMO, one of the oldest banks. AGF, Manulife, Invesco, Fidelity. Now we broker for a lot of these companies. We actually have 70 different companies and 250 products that we get to choose from those. So really quite a massive marketplace that we market for. And the great thing is a lot of these companies have entire teams dedicated just to serve World Financial Group agents. Reason being is we do so much volume that they have to dedicate all those people to us. And they believe in what we do, so they have no problem doing that. Now, again, that speaks to credibility because they would not be allowing all this resources to go to a company they didn't believe in that wasn't doing great things. Now, what do? Well, when we really simplify things, we do insurance, we do investments and savings, and then we have a whole bunch of referral partnerships that take care of just about everything else. But nothing in life is really that simple. So when we expand it, it really looks like a lot more, right? So when we talk about insurance, we take an educational approach to everything we do. Unlike the rest of the industry where it's on a time limit, they really don't get to know the customer or the client or the families they're serving. They sit down for 15 minutes, tell them what they should do, and then they walk out and the client doesn't know what the heck just happened. We sit down and educate people on the different things that we do so they can make informed decisions. So when we talk about insurance, we talk about the different types. There are so many different types out there. People don't realize the vastness of the amount of choice they have. So we talk about life insurance and the different types. We talk about critical illness. If someone gets sick, we can take that financial stress off you by looking after that family and protecting your income. Disability insurance, if you get hurt, same thing. That can be a lot of stress, not being able to go to work, losing work from it, but we can protect you from that. We talk about funeral planning, health and dental, even travel insurance. Now, on the real sexy side of things, because people like to talk about making money, growing money, preserving money a lot more, we talk about the differences in investments, the RDSP, the TFSA, the non-registered open accounts, insured tax strategies. All of these things are really amazing vehicles, but they have very specific roles. And if you don't understand what those rules are, and especially you don't understand the taxes that occur inside them, it can put you in a bad place. So we need to make sure that people understand that. And then finally, we have referral partnerships. that do mortgages, home and auto insurance, debt consolidation, forgiveness. We even do pet insurance. So we cover everybody from mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, dog, cat. We take care of everybody in the family and we do it all. Now, talk about some serious stuff. Now we have to talk about credit card debt, unfortunately, or debt in general. Now, by the end of October of 2019, Canada as a nation reached $100 billion in credit card debt. Now that's just credit card debt. It doesn't include your mortgage, your car loan, all that sort of stuff, right? Per capita, we are the highest indebted country in the world when it comes to credit card debt. That's almost $3,000 for every man, woman, and child. Statistics tell us today that almost 2/3 of every family would be financially destroyed within a month if the main breadwinner didn't come home or got sick and couldn't work anymore, right? And why is that? Well, it's because people just aren't saving anymore, right? If you look at the statistics at the bottom of the page, back in 1982, almost 1 out of every $4 was going, or every $5 was going into family savings. You fast forward to the end of 2018, and that drops to just over 1%, approximately 1 out of every $70 families are now putting away. So we're not preparing for emergencies. There's actually a statistic out there called the 91 and 9. It came out in a book called The 10 Things Revenue Canada Doesn't Want You to Know About. It came out in the early 2000s. And it said that back in the early 2000s, 91% of Canadians were destined to fail in retirement because they didn't have enough money to get to retirement, or that money was going to run out because we're living so much longer and we're not saving like we should. Now, at that time in the early 2000s, the household debt ratio was 1-to-1. So that means for every dollar of disposable income coming into a household, $1 of debt was owed, right? We were just getting by in the early 2000s. We fast forward to the end of 2019, the last annual statistics we have, that debt ratio has risen from every dollar of disposable income coming in, $1.77 is owed in debt. We're living off of credit. We're using credit to pay credit. So no wonder we can't save anything. And then when disaster strikes, we're left with nothing. Right? So being able to educate people, teach them about the 91 and 9, which now because of that higher debt ratio, economists are saying it's now 95 and 5. And 95% of Canadians are going to fail in retirement if they don't do something decidedly different. That something decidedly different starts with a good, sound, complete financial education. And there's no one else out there doing it except us. So what we have to do is a pretty profound and pretty serious job. Now, one of the things we educate Canadians on that very few people know is your financial independence number, right? Now, what your financial independence number is the big bag of money you need to retire when you want, the way you want. Okay, now the problem with most situations that Canadian families are in is they have no idea what that number is, right? That's the goal. And if you don't have a goal, how do you plan to get there, right? So if we sit down with people and we teach them what it is they're going to need to retire the way they want, now they can start putting a plan there. And the sad thing is the vast majority of Canadians are on this old system, right? The old baby boomer system where the idea was, you get married, you buy a house, you have kids, you pay your house off, and then you retire on Canada Pension Old Age Security. Well, Canada Pension Old Age Security hasn't kept up with inflation for decades. Right? The average Canada Pension Old Age Security right now is just around $1,300 a month, right? Who can live off $1,300 a month in Edmonton? This is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about what I do, because that is the plan my parents are on. They're in their 70s and all they can afford to do right now is sit on a couch and watch television because no one sat down and educated them. It's supposed to be the best time of the life that the time that they're preparing for their entire lives to be able to enjoy and travel and do things and spoil their grandkids. They can't do any of that because no one sat down and educated them, right? And when we talk about educating people, we need to put things into common words and common ideas that people really grasp. So when I talk to people, I say, hey, you know what? When you retire, do you want to eat? Yeah, of course you want to eat, right? But do you want to eat every day or just some days? Well, you probably want to eat every day if you want to be healthy, right? Now, do you want to eat just once a day or 3 times a day? Most people eat 3 times a day. Well, let's say we can get you a really good deal and it's only going to cost you $5 a meal, right? What does that look like? What do you have to save up just to eat a $5 meal 3 times a day for retirement? So let's say you have a couple, 65 years old, 3 meals a day, $5 a meal. They eat every day. Average life expectancy about 85, so they need that money for 85 to age 85. Well, they only need to save $219,000 to eat. And that's just to eat. So we haven't talked about medication as you get older. If you get better health or worse health, right? And healthcare doesn't cover everything. So you haven't talked about that. You haven't talked about the traveling you wanted to do. You haven't talked about spoiling your grandkids. You haven't talked about having fun, the thing that you want for your retirement, the fun you want. We haven't talked about any of that. We have just talked about eating, and there are people that aren't even halfway there, and they only got a couple of years to retirement. So what are they going to do? Well, they're going to rely on their kids, their grandkids to pay for their retirement, right? So another thing we like to talk about is the power or the rule of 72. I love talking about this. Before COVID hit, I went to a number of high schools and did some talks to high school students. And when I talked about this, it would make them angry. Almost every one of them would put their hand up and say, why do they not teach us this in school? It is something that should be taught in grade school at a young age and taught every year after that, right? It's basically the rule of compound interest. It was something that was made famous by Albert Einstein, but it was actually discovered in the late 1400s. It's been around for over 500 years, yet very few people know about it or understand how it works. And what it says is, if you take the interest you're getting in your money, you divide it into the number 72, that's approximately how many years it takes your money to double. So let's say you all have a bag of $10,000 that you inherited, and you're going to go to the bank and you're going to invest it. Okay, so you go to the bank, you invest it at 4%. We'll say you get a really awesome rate. Now, there's not any bank out there that offers you a 4% savings account, but we'll say for this that they do. And let's say you're 29. Okay, at 29, you go to that bank, you put your 10,000 in, 4%, 4 into 72 means that money's going to double it every 18 years. So in 18 years, it doubles to 20,000, and at 65, you have $40,000. You're only $180,000 away from eating. Not too exciting, is it? But what does the bank do with that money? Well, the bank does a couple things. Number one, the bank takes that money and they give it to professional money managers. The money managers manage that money on behalf of the bank. And on average, they're going to get between 12 and 18%, sometimes less, sometimes more, but that's roughly the average, right? But they do a second thing that most people don't realize is they take your $10,000 and they lend it right back to you. How many times have you gone for a loan and the next week you get a credit card in the mail, right? So they give you it back in credit. And what are you paying on credit card interest? 18 to 20%, right? If not more, right? So they're making a lot more than the 4% you're giving you. So let's look at what that looks like for the bank though, right? Let's say they have a really bad set of years and they only get 12%. We'll go on the low side, right? Well, 12 into 72 means that money doubles every 6 years on behalf of the bank, right? Now it started out as your money, but now it's benefiting the bank. So with 29, you jump to 35, 41, 47, 53, 59, 65. That money doubles to 10,000, 20,000, 40,000, 80,000, 160,000, 320,000. By the time you're 65, your money has doubled on behalf of the bank to $640,000. They cut you a check for 40 grand and walk away with 600,000. Right? Feel free to curse because all you are muted. Even if you weren't, I wouldn't really care. But yeah, I mean, that can anger a lot of people, but that's not the end of the story, because by law in Canada, for every dollar a bank takes in, it can lend it out 13 times. So now they've made almost $8 million off your 10,000. Now, does that make banks bad, or just make them really smart, right? So there's a saying out there, success leaves clues. So if we want to be successful like that, why don't we just do what the banks do? So our job is to make sure that we can get you access to the same sort of professional money managers the banks get to, so we can get you as far over to the right side of the screen as we can and get you much higher rates of savings and earnings in your investments. Now, if we could just double your interest to 8%, right? By doubling the percentage, we actually double the number of doubling periods. Let me say that again. By doubling the interest, we double the number of doubling periods. So instead of having 2 doubling periods, we have 4. And the last doubling period is always more than all of the other doubling periods combined. So if we can get one more doubling period for you, that's a lot of money. That can make a huge impact in people's lives, right? So very important having that education. Now, again, we talk a little bit about insurance, but really it's understanding the need for insurance. It's not just an arbitrary number, right? We talk about why you need it and what you need, right? You don't want to just cover your debts and your mortgage and that sort of thing. You want to be able to make sure that there's enough left over for your family so that if tragedy strikes, your spouse doesn't have to go right back to work. so that you have some money left over that can replace your income so that you can pay for the utilities, pay for your kids' sporting events and leisure activities, pay for your car and home insurance, those sorts of things that people don't really think about. And so what we say as a rule of thumb is between 10 and 20 times your annual income is roughly the amount you need. But we have very specific formulas that we can sit down, we can figure out to the dollar exactly what you need. And then we have certain systems and strategies that we can use to make sure that you're paying the absolute least amount possible, right? So really important what we do. Now, talking about some funner stuff, if funner is a word, let's talk about some fun stuff about growing money, right? Now, when we talk about growing money, I like to refer to it as our financial house. And the best part, or the most important part of a house, is always the foundation. If the foundation is not strong, it doesn't matter what we do above it, it's all going to collapse if the foundation doesn't stand. So a foundation of our financial house are our insurance products. We actually classify it as income protection. So if there's a tragedy in the family or an illness or an injury, right, that income is protected so that the added stress, the added financial stress doesn't make it harder to recover, right? So we again go over the critical illness, if you get sick, disability, if you get hurt, even estate planning, right? What do we do to make sure that when there is tragedy, whatever you've built is protected against taxes, is protected against creditors, and all that sort of stuff, right? So once we know that that foundation is solid, then we can start building on top of that foundation. Really, there's 5 ways in Canada that you can grow wealth. The first one is the home, right on the left side of the screen. Now, most people's biggest purchase of their lives is their home, right? But we teach people strategies you can use your home to be able to better your financial situation. We talk about getting you better interest rates so you can pay your mortgage off faster without having to increase the amount of payments you're making. We talk about the difference between mortgage and insurance versus personal life insurance. Very different products, and something you should talk to the person who invited you here about. But in the end, when you want to go retire, you can't rip off a cabinet door and go buy groceries. You need strategies to make that home liquid and pay very little taxes if possible, right? So we have to educate people about that. Now, the next 4, the RSP, the Open, the TFSA, and the Universal or the Insured Tax Strategy, these are all vehicles for investing. Now, I really have to make this clear because a lot of people think an RSP is actually an investment, and it's not. It's just a vehicle the investment goes into. So the stocks, the bonds, the GICs, the segregated funds, the mutual funds, those are the investments that go in the vehicle. And each of these vehicles have very different tax rules. So basically, it's like putting different types of gas. So we want to make sure that we put the best gas in our vehicle so it goes the furthest and is the most efficient, right? So when we talk about an RSP, we talk about, the fact that most people like them because there's a tax deduction. But most people, when they get that tax return the next year, they usually blow it, right? When really that money is meant to be thrown back into your RSP to compound your savings. Another great thing about RSPs, though, is the money stays in there and it grows tax deferred, which means you pay no taxes while it's in there. But when you take it out, it gets taken out as income and it gets added to your pension, your Canada Pension Plan, your old age security as income, and you're taxed on 100% of the RSP. So all of the principal plus all of the growth, everything is taxable, right? And the government controls it. So they tell you how much you can put in. And when you're 71, December of the year you turn 71, December 31st, you have to start taking that RSP out. A lot of people don't realize that. Now, it's not that the RSPs are bad. There's some really great things and great programs within that vehicle that can benefit people. But if you don't know what they are and you don't know the rules, you can be hurting yourself when it comes time to retirement. Now we talk about open accounts. Open accounts, also called non-registered accounts. Now, the great thing is they're not controlled by the government. So there's no limit on how much you can put in. There's no limit on when you can take it out or how much you can take out. If you do it correctly, you can still get a potential tax deduction within the open account. It grows tax deferred, or what we call tax advantage. So you pay very little or no tax while it's in there. But when it comes out, it gets taxed completely differently. If it's done correctly, you're only going to pay 50% tax on the growth alone. That's it. So all of the principal you put in, you get to take back tax-free, and you only pay tax on 50% of how much it's grown. So more money in your pocket, less going to taxes at time of retirement is a really big deal. Now, tax-free savings account. Very few people know how a tax-free savings account really works. One of the best things the Canadian government ever did was a tax-free savings account. One of the worst things they ever did was called it a tax-free savings account, because it's not a savings account. It's an investment account, right? So the same stocks and bonds and GICs and segregated funds you put into the RSP or the open, you can put into your tax-free savings account. Now, there are some limitations though, right? There's no tax deduction when you put it in. There's a limit every year, depending on what the inflation rate is. Now, if you were 18 when the tax-free savings account started in 2009, the accumulated amount you could put in right now is $69,500. And if you took money out, you could fill it back up again. You could fill that gas tank back up again, right? So it's a pretty good vehicle that the government created. And while the money's in there, it grows completely tax-free. And when you take it out, you pay absolutely zero tax. That's right, zero tax. I know people are asking, what's the catch? There's no catch. It's zero tax, right? So again, a lot more money in your pocket, less going to the tax man when you retire. Now, the last one is the universal life or the insured tax strategy. Now, it's actually an insurance product, but instead of paying for insurance like traditional term insurance, you actually pay money into an investment. And that investment grows, and they take money out of that investment to pay for the insurance part. And that investment can grow, and it grows tax deferred while you're in there. But if it's done correctly, you can access that money when you go to retire completely tax-free. Now, it is an insurance product, so you do have to qualify, and there's no tax deduction. But for the right person, it can be an incredible addition to their retirement investment. Now, unfortunately, most people, when they invest, they start on the left side of the screen with buying a home, investing in RSPs, and they start to move their way to the right. But financially successful people, they start on the right and they move to the left. They start with the least taxed things, the universal life, the insured tax shelter, the TFSA, and they move to the right, right? So allowing them to retire with a lot less tax burden. Now, here's something I really love. I love the fact that being a broker here, being an independent owner of my brokerage is an amazing thing, but what we do is really illustrated here. So in the traditional industry, what would happen is someone would sit down with you in your home and they'd say, listen, let's look at what you're doing. Let's take a look at your paycheck and what is going in and what is coming out. And if you ever represent that paycheck in a pie chart, basically, most Canadians are kind of represented here. So you've got about a quarter of your paycheck. You don't even see it. It goes to taxes, if not a little bit more. You got about another quarter goes to debt, if not a little bit more. And then the rest is your living expenses, right? Like we said earlier, almost just over 1% of that is going to go to savings. So very little, right? So there's really not a lot here for a traditional industry specialist to be able to sit down and say, hey, you know what, let's do this and this and this. So what they tended to do was say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Family, we really can't do anything for you because you don't have any money. So here's an idea. Go out and make more money and then come back, which means go get another job, work more overtime. Well, most people already have 2 or 3 jobs. They're already working overtime. They're already overstressed, overburdened. And now the traditional industry is asking you to go do more. But by taking an educational approach, and again, we're one of the only people out there, the only companies out there doing this, we teach you about your taxes, and we teach you how to cut some way out of your taxes, reduce your tax burden. We teach you about debt. We get you access to things to reduce your debt, reduce your interest rates, right? And we free up money in what you're already doing. So we don't ask you to do more. We go to work for you. And then we go and we look at what you're doing now. We're gonna leave the things that are doing really well for you, and then we're gonna add some things that we can from that money we freed up, right? And what we do is then we go out and we shop to all those companies I showed you previously, those 70 companies, those 250 products, and we're finding the best product and service to solve whatever challenge you need to get over to get to your goals and dreams. And the best part about it is everything we do is complimentary. That's right. We go to work and we free up on average between $500 and $2,000 for a family. We use that money to help or to go use the products and services from the industry. The products and service providers from the industry are so happy they pay World Financial Group, so you don't have to pay us. And let me tell you, World Financial Group pays me a lot better than the police ever did, ever could, or ever would. It's just one of those things. We're the highest paid industry in the world. And you know, we can make really good money by going out and just helping other people. So everyone gets to win here, right? So that pretty much wraps up who we are, what we do. Again, this is just the tip of the iceberg though. So if you are, have more questions, reach out to the person who invited you here. If you know somebody, let them know, that we can sit down and have this conversation with them too. So I'm going to turn it over to Mitch. Mitch is actually, like he said before, he was my guy. He's the one that helped me. He's the one that brought me into this business, and he's been my trainer, my mentor, my coach, and my friend. So without further ado, I don't want to take any more time from him. He's got a really awesome story. One thing I will say, though, is Mitch is actually one of the people in this entire industry that has worked for just about every company. So he knows what he's talking about. So listen carefully and take it away, Mitch.
Awesome. Thanks, Vic. And I'm sure everybody would agree that you guys learned something tonight, right? And that is just the tip of the iceberg on some of the things that we're actually out there teaching Canadians right now, right? So before I dive into kind of what I'm talking about, a little bit about my background. My background isn't money and finance. My background's actually a snowboard instructor and plant operator, which screams every single day to talk to people about money and finances, right? I was very lucky at the age of 19, had a family friend who'd been in the industry for about 40 years, ran one of the most successful brokerages in Western Canada back in the 70s, actually take me under his wing, coached me, mentored me, really showed me what this industry had to offer. We ended up parting ways after a couple of years, but I fell in love with the industry. I just needed to find my home, right? And 18 years ago, I ran across World Financial Group. 18 years later, we just opened up our 5th office. We've got offices here in Edmonton, Calgary, Camrose. We're actually in northern BC there as well. We're expanding across Canada. So I'm going to share my screen a little bit here as well, dive into things. Hope everybody can see that okay. Right there. All right. I think Vic did a fabulous job about, is there need out there for what it is that we do? Well, the stats out there, 95% of the population is retiring at or below the poverty line, and 5% are okay, right? Which means there's a huge amount of the population that really just needs access to when it comes to financial education, right? You're dealing with a credible and reputable company. Well, the fact that we're owned by Aegon being the 4th largest financial firm in the world, traded on every major stock exchange. But I think truly we're the most highly regulated industry in the world, right? You have to have licenses not to work in this. It's not just one of those deals, right? But what I get to talk about here for the next few minutes is, is the timing rate for the industry. Is there a proven system? And at the end of the day, if you were to look at a career inside the financial industry, is it profitable? Can you actually make some money doing it, right? So I go back to that acetylene plant. I don't know if anybody knows what acetylene is, but used for cutting torches. It was a great job coming out of high school. It was about $25 an hour, full benefits to be in the city. That was great 20 years ago. I was making more money than a lot of my friends combined, lots of extra disposable cash, right? But it was a union job. And I'm sure everybody's familiar with unions, right? The plus side to a union is it's kind of tough to get laid off, right? There's some steps you got to go through on that side of things, or get fired, right? The downside to it, though, is I was making the exact same paycheck as somebody had been there 10 years longer than you've been, right? And they always say, if you want to find out what your future has in store for you, go find somebody who's been at your job or your career for 15, 20 years longer than you've been and ask them, how's it going, right? Well, here's what I found. They're making the exact same paycheck as I was. They were paycheck to paycheck. Their body hurt because it was a very physical job, right? They're complaining about the amount of time that they got off and what they were able to do, and they were hoping the company pension was going to be enough. Sell me the dream, right? So I was very lucky at a young age to come across this industry. Now, if I could promise everybody, though, $100,000 a year job for the next 30 years, how many people would take it? Most people say, hey, that's awesome, right? Well, let's take a look at exactly what that means. If we made $100,000 a year for 30 years, that means we'd end up making $3 million. But do we get to keep that? No, we end up having to pay taxes on it, right, as an employee. And we're going to use a 30% tax bracket, which is low, but that's $900,000 that goes to Mr. Trudeau, and he's going to spend it in all the right places, right? I'm just kidding. Leaves us with $2.1 million. Most Canadians want to go buy our own house or buy our own property, right? What's an average home here in Edmonton, right? It's anywhere from $400,000 to $500,000, right? Let's call it $450,000. But do we just walk up to the bank and say, bank, here's $450,000. I'd like the keys to my house, please. No, we end up getting a mortgage on it. Mortgage, therefore, is interest. So we actually end up paying $700,000 for that $450,000 house by the time it actually gets paid off. Leaves us with $1.4 million. Divide that down into a monthly basis, that's $3,900 a month. that's in our checking account. Well, what are we going to do with it? Now, some of these might be high, some of them might be low, but I think in a lot of cases, we're in the ballpark here. You know, home repair, maintenance, property taxes, $350. Utilities, we put $200. I know I'm really low on that one. I know one of my bills alone is $200 a month, right? Home insurance, $100. Phone, internet, TV, $300. Vehicle payments. Now we put $700 on here, but if you look at most Canadian families today, do they have one vehicle in the house or two? Generally it's two, and they're both financed, right? So I think it's $700 is easy. That's even just one truck, right? Car insurance, gas, upkeep, $700. Groceries, dining out, $1,000. Kids, school, and activities. Now we have $100 on this one. Does anybody know a child that's in hockey? Right? It's like $100 a minute almost to have a child in hockey. So I know that if you have 2 or 3 children, that you're spending more than $100 a month when it comes to outside activities. Clothing, toiletries, $200, miscellaneous, $200. That's $3,850. What are you going to do with the extra $50? And is there anywhere in there that we talked about retirement planning, proper insurance, you know, doing anything really fun outside or travel or anything, right? And that's at $100,000 a year income. Now, I know a lot of families combined aren't bringing $100,000 into their house. So if that's the case, we need to start taking a look at something else, right? Now, I love history. History is one of my favorite subjects. And if you really pay attention to what I talk about here over the next 5 minutes, it could drastically change the choices that you make in your career going forward, right? So what happened back in 1946, 1947? It was the end of the war, right? We had a whole bunch of lonely men come back to see a whole bunch of lonely women. There's some cheap entertainment. And all of a sudden we had a whole bunch of babies on the scene. To the point that we went from a generation before that, about 30 million here in North America, to over 90 million baby boomers almost overnight, right? Well, what kind of an impact has the baby boomers made on the economy? So if you go back to 1946, I'm sure everybody's heard of a small company called Gerber Baby Food, right? Gerber Baby Food before 1946 hadn't sold 1 million jars of baby food in their entire existence as a company, right? By the time 1947, 1948 was coming, they were selling over 1 million jars of baby food a week. Totally changed the way that industry operated. I promise you that if you invested in Gerber Baby Food at that point, you are not sitting on this call here tonight, right? You're down in the Cayman Islands, you're sitting on a beach, drinking margaritas, counting your money, right? But we missed that one. Now, I've been taught, though, that babies have a tendency to grow up into children, right? What are children like? Toys. Hasbro, Mattel, Fisher-Price absolutely exploded, right? And I also love leaving people with useless information, but do you guys realize that Mattel actually used to be an ammunition manufacturer, right? During the war, that's what they made, ammunition and bombs. War ends, we've got all of these factories. What are we going to do with it? Let's go into making toys. It was a great decision for them. Kids grow up into teenagers. What do teenagers like? Fast food, fast car. McDonald's, A&W, Corvettes, Camaros, Mustangs all came out because of the baby boomers. Come up to the early 80s, right? The baby boomers are wanting to get out of the house for the second or third time. They want to go buy their own property. But we had those 3 people wanting to buy every one house, right? Or 3 people wanting to borrow every $1 from the bank in the form of a mortgage, right? Supply and demand. Banks drove up interest rates just to slow down the lending. Prime rate at that point was almost 22%. Could you imagine over 22% on the biggest debt, your house, right? The biggest debt that you have. I mean, there's something called jingle mail at that point where the banks would open up the door of their bank. There'd be a big pile of envelopes sitting on the floor. They'd pick it up and it would jingle. There was people literally mailing back the keys to their house because they couldn't afford the payments anymore. Yet there were many millionaires made in the real estate industry at that point. Small company called Remax started at that point. We'll come back to them here in a few minutes. Now, come up closer to today. The baby boomers are turning 60 every 6 seconds right now, right? What's the number one thing on their mind? Retirement, right? Yeah, you would be surprised on how many people I sit down with right now who are 50, 55, 60. They're lucky to have $30,000 put away. And they're saying, Mitch, I want to retire in the next 10 years. Well, guess what? It's not going to happen if you keep going the route that you're going, right? So there's a huge need for education there. Now, if you understand what I just talked about, there's three industries going to absolutely go through the roof now going forward. Okay? The first one is healthcare. Right? As the baby boomers are getting older, ailments come up, right? Prescription drugs are going to start going through the roof, right? Drug companies are just sitting there rubbing their hands because they know that it's coming. Right? The second is technology. Anything that's going to allow those baby boomers to live a little bit of an easier life, they're all over it. Right? The third is financial services. Anything that's going to stretch that retirement dollar a little bit further and allow the baby boomers to retire at a quality of life they want to retire at, they want to know how to do it. Out of those three industries, the financial industry, the industry that we're in, is the highest paid with the least amount of stress. Right? So, but if you are going to look at a career change, definitely look at those three industries going forward. Now, what we have right now, though, what we call convergence conditions. It's never happened in history before, where we have three generations all focused on money. We have the Bob Hope generation, unfortunately getting to that age where they're starting to pass on. You've got well over $1 trillion a year. Now, this has been happening for a few years now, but $1 trillion a year is being passed from that generation down to the baby boomers. Because it's not structured correctly, half is going to the government. Right? We have the baby boomers' children and their grandchildren taking a look at them saying, you know what, I don't want to be in that position when I get to that age. I want to start doing something now, to the point that I even get 16, 17-year-olds wanting to sit down at the kitchen table while we're talking to their parents about money, saying, Mitch, can I put away $50? Can I put away $100 just to get something moving? And then we have the baby boomers right in the middle of that, right? Perfect storm. So if you could put a business right in the center of that, just get a little bit of the actions going by, I'd say the timing is fantastic, right? Now, a little bit about our system. We're one of the very few companies in this industry that actually allows somebody to start part-time. Well, let's relate that to another industry, like the real estate industry. Real estate industry has been around for forever. There's always been somebody selling a house or selling land or something like that, right? But it's always been an old boys club, right? If you weren't wealthy, if you didn't know a whole lot of people, no one's going to give you an opportunity to get into the real estate industry. Back in the 80s, though, RE/MAX came in and said, you know what, we want to change the way this industry operates. We want to take stay-at-home moms. We want to take welders. We want to take farmers. And we want to teach them how to sell real estate. Everybody laughed at them, said there's no way that's going to get off the ground. No one's going to want to do business with you. Well, how did that work out for RE/MAX? Right? There's a point where RE/MAX actually sold over 50% of the world's real estate on that model. Most of the real estate companies have actually graduated over to that type of a platform, allowing somebody to work with them and start with them part-time. What's the benefits of somebody starting part-time? Well, starting here part-time, you get a world-class education when it comes to money and finance. Right? Now, I relate that to a lot like buying a vehicle. Anybody remember buying their first vehicle? Right? I know my first vehicle, I got absolutely taken advantage of on that transaction, right? But if I had worked in the car industry for even 3 months, would that have happened? No, because I wouldn't understand the sales tactics. I wouldn't understand the spreads and the margins and everything, where I could have negotiated that a lot better, right? So worst case scenario, somebody starts with us part-time, world-class education when it comes to money and finance, right? Now, a lot of my part-time agents, where they start off is like clients. Right, like Vic is an example. Vic was a client of mine for 17 years, passed me on to coworkers and families, and I love that. I love referrals. But we started having a conversation and say, Vic, you know what? Why don't you go get a license so we can actually pay you for those referrals, right? So somebody just going out part-time, helping one average typical family a month, works out to anywhere from about $1,000 to $1,500. Again, that's not what the family pays us. It's what the companies pay us to send them that client. So if somebody helped 3 or 4 families a month, that's a pretty good part-time income, right? But what would a typical family today do with an extra $1,000 a month? Make a pretty big impact, right? Pay off some debt pretty quick, right? Pay off or get some investments going, right? Investing $1,000 a month is a lot more fun than investing $50, and $1,000 a month will help you get to your retirement goals a lot quicker, right? What about just for travel, right? What a novel idea, paying for vacations with cash, right? Whereas most people rack it up on a credit card, spend 3-4 years paying it off, and then rack it right back up on their next trip, right? We transition then, people start making more part-time with us than they do in their full-time job, transition over to a full-time broker. You know, an average broker helping, 5 average families a month works out to about $125,000 a year. Now, I don't say that to impress you. I say that more to impress upon you. That would you agree with me that some industries just pay better than others, right? The financial industry being one of the highest paid industries in the world, right? And just to give you a couple examples here, but these are people that actually started out of my office here in Edmonton, or have actually moved out and opened up offices across Canada now. But you know, Derek Germain was in the oil field. He was making $100,000 a year 20 years ago when he started here. He's making a little over $600,000 now. Errol was an engineer just starting off his career, making $50,000. He's making about $150,000 now. Mark Gravel, power lineman with EPCOR, making $90,000. He's just about to cross over $600,000. You know, I love Cameron Dunbar's story. Cameron was still in high school actually when he started with us. He was writing his last exam before he was getting out of grade 12. So he never had a real full-time job, and he's making about $350,000. I mean, we've got teachers, meat cutters, police officers, bankers, plant operators, snowboard instructors. I mean, just out of our team alone, we've got over 350 people that make over $100,000 a year. We got 10 people that make over $1 million a year, with our highest earner making over $8 million a year right now. But I also want to be truthful and honest with you, is I got a whole lot of people that do this. Nothing, right? It's not one of those get rich quick things where all of a sudden, you know, money's going to rain from the sky. If anything, I say it's get rich slow thing. There's a lot of stuff to learn. There's licensing that you need to get out of the way. But here's the one thing I've always understood is I've always been a hard worker. I've been working since I was 14 years old. The problem was I was always in a vehicle where no matter how hard I worked, there was always that glass ceiling, where it's as much as I could possibly make. So if you're going to work hard, why not work hard in a spot where there's no glass ceiling, there's no ceiling cap on what you can actually make, right? Sorry. Here's the real reason why I'm still here, though, is rewards and recognition. We recognize people to death here. I mean, just for jumping on the call here tonight, we're going to mail you out a plaque. No, it's really not that bad, but you know, we recognize people to death, right? You go out and you make your first $50,000 a year, we give you a watch. When do most people get their watch? Right? When they retire, when they don't need to tell time anymore. It's the most messed up system I've ever seen, right? We give out these big Super Bowl rings when you hit over $100,000 a year. I mean, it's the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life, right? But you'll never take it off my hand.
Good meeting it now. Okay. I don't think it might.
Sorry. It's the ugliest thing you've ever seen, right? But you'll never peel it off my hand. And the reason being is it's not the income, it's the stories behind it. Right? The people that have crossed into retirement because of programs that we did 10 years ago, the kids that have gone to school paid for because of programs we did 12 years ago. I've had the unfortunate benefit of paying out some death claims. And the reason I call, you know, a benefit is I was the only person sitting at that kitchen table actually sliding a check across to the family, right? Whereas most people, when that happens, they're saying, pay me, pay me, pay me, knowing that those families were looked after because of the program that we put in place, right? Does anybody like to travel? Right? What's better than traveling? Traveling for free, right? We take the top 500 couples to Hawaii, all expenses paid. Right? We do that every single year. Right? We do smaller ones just for our office here. We've done, you know, Alaskan cruises and Mexico and, you know, San Francisco and Arizona and all these different trips just for going out there and doing what we should be doing anyways, right? What about charity? Do you have a charity that's close to your heart? You know, very unique in business is we actually have a company foundation that if any one of our agents goes and raises money for a charity, as long as it's an actual charity, we'll match it, right? One of the other owners here, his son passed away now, it was about 17 years ago or so. We did a charity golf tournament in his name, and we raised over $1.5 million for the Make-A-Wish Foundation just on that golf tournament, right? We've started now doing a hockey game, Edmonton versus Calgary. If you see the picture in the middle, generally do that at the West Edmonton Mall Ice Palace, and they've raised over $350,000 for the Stollery, right? Just for really bad hockey. It's not even really good hockey, right? But you know, raising it for a great cause. So as we wrap up here, there's really 4 options. I really don't like option number 4. It's not the best one on there, but option number 1, complimentary financial checkup. I mean, just some of the things that Vic talked about. You know, is that worth half an hour or 45 minutes to see how some of that information would help you get further ahead, right? This is where everybody says yes, right? We don't charge anything to do it. Completely free of charge to see how to get yourself properly positioned to get yourself further ahead financially, right? Option number 2 is maybe take a look at this as part-time. There's a lot of people I sit down with that, you know what, they love their job. They're just not making enough money, right? So if you can make an extra $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 a month on the side, it would make a huge, huge difference, right? Option number 3 is take a look at this as full-time, right? Because there's a lot of people out there right now that don't love their job. They don't love the money that they make and save, the time that they have off, the ability for them to spend time with their family and that. And maybe it's time to start looking at something else. And that's where I was, you know, 18 years ago, jumping in both feet. And option number 4 is obviously do nothing. Now, if you've absolutely knocked it out of the park the last 5 years, I will be the first person to high five you, because, you know, and I can count on one hand over the last 20 years that people can truly say they absolutely just, you know, crushed the last 5 years. And they say, if you do what you did the last 5 years for the next 5 years, where do we end up? In the exact same spot, right? And I know with the economy and everything that's going on here right now, that, you know, a lot of turmoil, maybe it's not the best time to start looking at a career change, but I'm sure you'd agree with me that life's too short, right? We don't know when tomorrow it's game over, right? So why not invest your time and your efforts into a career that you love, that helps getting your family to where it is that they want to go, right? So we appreciate spending some time with you here tonight. The person that invited you will definitely reach out, or if we piqued interest and you want to touch base with them right away, feel free to give them a call. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions and set up a time to have a chat. I hope you guys had some value out of tonight, and we look forward to chatting soon. Have a great evening.